This part of the year is always super melancholy. You get the rush of having the finals, the new champions. We look at our pool and who are the new winners. And then we realize that we have the most amount of time between our present and the next series of madness. But let's not get too upset yet. First, we got to put the nail in the coffin on this, the 24-25 season. Then we'll deal with the future stuff later. So let's talk a little bit about the finals that just went down. Let's definitely visit our bracket before we say goodbye to a great season. This is not going to be a recap of the last two games in each tournament because you probably watched them if you're watching this. And if you didn't, go watch the highlights. I'm not going to do it justice. I will say, though, for our two pools, they were kind of, I guess, meaningful finishes that made sense. If you were a Florida fan this year, you kind of earned this win. Hopefully you're in the top 7. I know not everyone that picked the Gators got there, but at least most of you are getting paid out, and you definitely sweat through it enough to certainly earn it. Florida didn't make this look easy. Even pretty much after the first round, there was always moments in every single game they were either legit behind or kind of felt like something bad was about to happen to them. This one kind of played exactly perfectly. You were just getting to that point where you were doubting, are they actually going to make a move? And then they did. The defense locked down, the athleticism kicked in, the length kicked in, and mainly for them, it's once their offense starts rolling, everything else just makes sense. Shut down for huge parts of the game by the Cougars, who once again, bridesmaid but not the bride. The only thing that makes me feel bad is the Cougars are not like one of those teams that people tend to hate, even if you don't love them or cheer for them. And to have that be the finish was kind of rough. I mean, Chris Webber in the timeout, nothing will ever replace that as a last moment, but Sharp looking very much less than sharp and certainly just was completely bamboozled by the sheer height of I think it was Clayton Jr. that suddenly came up to block, and so he just drops the ball. And I mean, you saw it, but I don't know if you had the same reaction as me when you're counting 1,000, 2, 1,000. It just felt like the whole moment was taking forever, waiting for something to happen, and instead we're all just watching a couple people stare at a basketball without being able to touch it before it eventually kind of dives on it, and then we have kind of that end. But literally, I had enough time and cognizant real life moment to be like, is this really how we're gonna? Yep, it definitely. And then it was just over. It is a reminder, though, you got to be a little bit more prepared and certainly maybe run something a little bit more deceiving than dribble around the top and just hope for the best. Although that is dismissing a lot of screens and movement. It's just, like anything else as a coach, if you call something and it works, you look like a genius. If it looks like that, you're going to get a whole lot of questions. And we've been seeing a lot of those questions in the last couple of days. So I won't get to those parts. I will say, though, for the guys bracket, I am very curious. I said this before and I wrote it up. I'm super interested to see next year. Is this going to promote everybody just to go for the number 1 seeds? Or are some people going to, remember that even though last year was a very chalky tournament, we did have NC State popping through, so there were some movement there. On the women's side, we're definitely going to get a lot of chalk next year, even though it was a number 2 seed, the only number 2 in both tournaments in the Elite or in the Final Four. But they were, let's be honest, kind of a number 1 and pretty much one of the favorites. They were one of the top 3 picks in our pool and consensus around. But that was really the Paige Bueckers story in general. The whole kind of element, the final was not a great one, except it just was kind of like a celebration. It's like, I was thinking it's kind of that third in a trilogy or one of the last movies. And it was really like, the Odyssey here, where you do get the hero's journey in Paige, being player in the nation so young, hurting herself and kind of going to rock bottom, slowly climbing back. All the comparisons last year, because remember, Gino is that kind of coach that makes this decision when he was very publicly saying he had a choice to recruit either Paige or Caitlin. He went Paige for a lot of different reasons and has praised her since. Caitlin last year knocks UConn out in the Final Four to get to the final. So it kind of just felt like this was the hero's journey from Paige. And just like those movies I talked about and kind of the hero's journey in general, in the final, she wasn't the most interesting character. If you're looking at some of those movies I'm talking about, the Han Solo character, the Trinity, the Hermione, the whatever the people's names were that turned into Orlando Bloom and Vigo, they're the more interesting ones. And realistically, in the final, we had kind of the same piece where Paige played great, but probably had 2 or 3 other teammates play statistically better, and that's why she didn't get player of the game. But still definitely kind of the player of the tournament, and really was, in terms of the narrative, the lead on that one. Now she gets the benefit of being the first round pick to the worst team in the W in a few weeks. And we'll see how that journey goes, because this comparison between her and the people who graduated last year, as she's the same age of, that's not going anywhere. Speaking of not going anywhere, my last thoughts on this one, I really do think I don't follow college football as much as basketball, but I still follow it. And even someone who follows, I don't think you couldn't. $1,000 says I can't call who's in what conference right now. I still get so confused about who's gone where the actual power conferences lie. I'm also one of those people that are kind of thinking that conferences might not be something that's around in 2 decades. I know the US hates any kind of change when it comes to this stuff, but the college game is evolving really, really quickly. And I don't know that they're really doing enough to support it, but at least it is changing in some of the right ways in terms of some of the player empowerment. But we are getting the downside, obviously, with some of those transfers. NIL being more important than maybe going to professional leagues might increase the play, but it might, as in this year, go back to the power conferences rule all. I'm not going to say there's bold predictions that I'm going to make that you haven't already read, but I will say that in the next 10 or 15 years, if the pool were to go to that long, and I have no interest in it not going that long, it's going to be a very different tournament. But as long as they have more than 64 teams, or at least 64 teams, I should say. I know they're considering going bigger because, it's the US. We don't make smarter. We just make it bigger, and it's okay. They're never going to downsize as long as we don't lose the spirit of the madness, and as long as we get this kind of chunk of time, I'm in. What it looks like, though, that's anyone's guess. Speaking of people's guesses, let's go on to the brackets that turned people's maybe whims or just divine intervention into some spending money. We're going to start with the women's bracket because it was finished first. And speaking of finishing first, Kelly, congratulations. This is now your second tournament win, putting you in the illustrious company with just Kevin Horst as our only 2-time Hall member. However, you have a side asterisk in being the first and currently only men's and women's champion, maybe changing what Pauline McKenna is, and people who've been around the pool long enough might know what I'm talking about. Now, the Hall is a little bit bigger than it was last time you won this thing, so congratulations on that as well. I'll be in touch. Connor, I believe this one is actually your bracket and not a family member's bracket. I know you kind of put them in for the whole squad, but I'm 90% sure this one is yours. I'll be in touch there too, and congratulations on the second place finish. Finishing the payouts, some guy named Mike. I think I've already paid him out, so I'll sort that out on my own, but congratulations to me is a really weird thing to say. Emma, Jake, my dogs, Penny, Lara, Tom, and Will do round out our top 10. So obviously these are a lot of names that I hear every year. Can't wait to see everyone back in it next year. Hopefully, if we can maybe get a few more brackets in, we can start having that conversation about expanding the pool pot as well. On the guys' side, once again, we do have another champion of note. So John Strecker, congratulations. I mentioned to you, and I think I said last week, but just so people are unaware, John also, this is his first time winning either one of the pools, but he is the first ever tri-generational, 3-generation champion, has a daughter and a granddaughter who've already taken home the prize in Jackie and Penny in the last couple years. So congratulations, John. Grandpa Paparazzi finally got his title, and this is a big one, so we've already been in touch, and so congratulations on that one. Kent, you also are now, so I should say, John, if the men's bracket is big enough, we have divisions, so he also takes down the Americas pool. Kent Rushke, you took the Euro African second spot. This is pretty good. Most years you have multiple brackets. This year, for a number of reasons, you only had the one. That's all you needed, so congrats. Third place, Nikki, you also take the Asian region. So our top 3 do actually pop into each of the regions, which is fine. People know I do this just in case there's one region that goes off, so everyone gets a little bit more attention on that one. Congrats. Finishing out our payment plan here. So the top 7 are in the money. So that's Amari, who is your first time. So congrats. We'll be in touch. Felix, this is your first time on the bracket. So well done. I mean, I think I'm pretty much this pool introduced you to what college basketball was, so it's great that it only took you a couple years and now you're there. Sticking at ISK, Rennie, congratulations. Not only that Duke didn't win, but that you finishing third. And Jared, you said it was your year. It almost was, and it could have been if things just fell a little bit different. And obviously you have been just as interested in a different divisions March Madness, watching your son kind of compete this year. So this has been an extra special year for you, and you do get a little bit of payment in the end for it. Ben, I guess you needed 5 or maybe 6 whiskeys. This is a bummer because 8th and 9th, you were right on the doorstep, but they're kind of the highest one that didn't get paid out. And then Krista, back again. second now, I think, year in the pool. Your daughters cashed in last year. This year, top 10 doesn't get you the money, but does get you the pride of saying that you did pick the national champion. So congratulations. That's our pool breakdown. Pretty much that's it from me. Now just one more closing note and we can wrap this up for this season. After this many words spoken and written, I don't have a whole lot unique to say. Well, I still do, let's be honest, but you probably don't want to hear it. So we're going to move on with just saying sincere thanks to those who kind of watch these, who read the write-ups and their personal write-ups and maybe give me a hint if I need to go back and change a typo. I appreciate that. But I appreciate anyone who's kind of following along. For the newbies to the pool, hopefully it was worth your time and you enjoyed it and you want it again next year. For the vets, you're going to hear from me, but at the same time every year. So as always, huge thank you. Love the tournament. Love seeing everybody involved. Hopefully I can catch up with some people soon, but we'll deal with that next. All this just to say, congrats to everyone who's taken home a bit of cash. Huge congrats to Kelly and John, and happy madness, everybody.